Welcome to the Conscious Pivot Podcast with international speaker, business mentor, best-selling author of Pivot, and your host, Adam Markell. The Conscious Pivot shares the stories and wisdom of people who have successfully reinvented some area of their business and personal life. You'll gain powerful insights into how you can fully embrace new opportunities, increase your performance, and master the art and science of innovation and resilience. So please join Adam as he guides you on your conscious pivot.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Pivot Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Markell, and I'm feeling so blessed in this moment to be here with you. I feel in my body just this peace and this calm today, which is a lovely feeling, actually, and something that I want to feel and experience as often as possible. And it really is true that what we focus on is what we manifest. And so when I'm thinking about peace, when I'm focused on peace, when I'm asking questions about how it is that I can experience more peace, it's so interesting how answers show up that are peaceful, how my experience mirrors that desire and that focus. And so, yes, peace was on my mind this morning when I woke up. And even though I've done a whole lot today, I've had a lot of things going on. I just took a beautiful kind of 30-minute walk in the sunshine and looking at flowers and putting my hands on trees and just really experiencing connectedness and at the same time also experimenting with where it is that I find myself by default, so to speak, thinking and experiencing myself as separate from things that are either inanimate objects or even other living things in nature that I just feel separate from, including other people. So it was just lovely that I came back to my office and found that on my agenda was this incredible conversation I was going to have with a lovely, lovely person, an incredible young woman who is a mother and an entrepreneur and a 7-figure earner, for those of you that are hyped about that. And there's no reason not to be, because certainly currency is a really useful thing. So I'm a huge believer in creating abundance of every kind, including in the area of money and business. So she has managed to harmonize a lot of those things. And I don't say balance because I don't know that balance is really what yin and yang is all about. It's kind of a difficult thing to stay in balance, but it really is possible to create harmony. And so in knowing her a very short while, but having more knowledge and awareness about her family and in fact being related to her and connected to her through my own agent, my own book agent and publisher, this is a conversation I'm really looking forward to. So today I get to introduce you to Peta Kelly, who happens to be the author of an incredible book that I have sitting on my desk right here, which is just magnificent. Earth is Hiring. And the subtitle is beautiful too. The New Way to Live, Lead, Earn, Give for Millennials and anyone who gives a shit. Flippin' love that. So welcome to the show, Peta.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's good to be here.
Oh, way cool. So as you guys can tell from Peta's accent, she's from Kentucky. Or Texas, is it? I can't remember. Anyhow,
Australia.
Is Kentucky a place in Australia? I don't know. Maybe. Peta, tell us a little bit about yourself, because you and I spoke just a little bit before we hit the record button, and I know you have a great deal of humility, which I so respect, and also I think it's important that people know what you think is important about your history and your bio.
Yeah. Well, as you said, I'm Australian, and I don't know if it is that obvious with my accent anymore, because when I go home to Oz, everybody tells me I sound American, which is crazy because, my husband's just like, you are so Aussie. But I grew up in Australia, single mum of 4, which is an important part of my story because she, was my hero. And, when I left school, I had a dream to become a doctor by the time I was 25. I went on that path, which was a path that most people my age thought, was a good path. Go to university, do an honors degree, get a Ph.D. scholarship, do that, and then I would be a doctor by the time I was 25, right? Like, hurrah, that's just the best. And I did that, and I got all the way through. I published research. I did an honors degree, and then I got to my PhD scholarship, and I was about 6 months in, and I just started to feel, just started to get sign after sign in my body, in my feelings of anxiousness, in my gut, in my exhaustion, that I was no longer on the right path. And, as you said, as we chatted earlier, that was probably one of the greatest pivots in my life, because it took a lot of courage to admit that this very safe path of science and PhD and becoming a doctor that young was not for me anymore. And I didn't have any business background. My family didn't have any business background. All I knew was science and soccer and partying. And so I took a leap of faith, and left my PhD and went traveling around the world. And that's when I was introduced to my first business, which was network marketing, done well, done right, done with integrity. And again, I look back at that journey and I realize how important that was, because I was so young, 23, when I was introduced to basically this tens of thousands of millennials who were also attracted to this business model, because they were really struggling to understand how they fit into this world, and struggling to understand themselves and what was so different about how they knew in their being, we were here to live, lead, earn, and give differently. And so I was thrust really into like this leadership role, and was growing, as fast as I could, and just really throwing myself into this, what I knew then to be my sole purpose, and to help this generation understand, what evolution has given us in our DNA that is so different, and how to use our unique gifts to create a more thriving and be a more thriving collective for our planet and our children, and through all the elements of business and leadership and just living and our vibration and giving and philanthropy and everything. So that led me to create other businesses and still serve in that arena, but create other businesses and projects, and just be literally, I call it like employed by the earth. Just, where do you want me? What businesses? Where do you want, like, just being used.
Deploy me.
Yeah. Employ me. Yeah.
Deploy.
Deploy. I don't want to get deployed just yet.
at your will.
Yeah.
Peta, so, I mean, a couple of things. For one thing, I would love to track with you in the moment now is what's something you're grateful for right here in this moment?
My child. So she's 10 months old next week, and she's just so amazing. She's just magic.
I've never asked anybody this before, and I'm a parent as well. Randy and I, we have 4 kids, and I wish we had a little one, and probably not anytime soon, I think. Or although we might find ourselves with a little grandchild at some point.
Yeah,
would be lovely. What is the most amazing thing? What's the thing that blows you away the most about looking at your little girl?
When people say like, this is my child, I've always seen her as like, I was the mother that she chose to birth her and house her, but she's just so like divine and not mine, like I am so grateful to be her mom and to get to hold space for her to blossom. And like, but it's always felt weird for me when people have like this ownership over their children, so the most amazing thing for me is just how amazing she is, and like that I got to be a vessel for this complete individual child to be born. And as we're going to get into, I speak a lot about every generation having evolutionary changes in their DNA to adapt to the world. And I can already see in her just this brilliance that the world doesn't know yet. And so many, I feel like her entire generation is going to blow us away with her brilliance, and I'm already seeing it. And so I love that I got to explain to the world why millennials are so different. And now I'm looking at her and she's teaching me like, Mom, like you haven't seen anything yet, so I'm just in awe of just her as a person and her entire generation. I'm just like, can't wait for her to start speaking so I can start taking notes.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm first of all, thank you. I was feeling grateful as I was listening to you share your story or part of your story in the feeling. So as I was walking before I came back for the podcast, I was thinking about the unified field, and I was thinking, what does that mean? And what's the gap? And how do I close the gap? And I'm listening to this incredible book by Michael Brown, who's he's from South Africa. So, it's interesting with accents. Somebody might mistake an Aussie, but it's a very different accent, of course, as you know. And it's just a beautiful book called The Presence Process, Michael Brown. And in thinking about that and thinking about the synchronicities or the synergies or the moments. So what does that all mean? Well, you think about somebody and the phone rings and it's them. You think about somebody and you get a text from them. You're feeling as though somebody's watching you, and you turn over your shoulder and there's somebody looking at you. It's things like that where we have evidence of our connection points. So as I'm contemplating these things and walking back for our interview, and then listening to you tell the story of waking up in the morning and feeling some exhaustion and anxiety and feeling of, that there's something wrong, that the body, that you were tuned into your body was telling you was something wrong. Well, you got that message earlier than me. So just as you're speaking about how your daughter is probably vibrating at a different level and has different consciousness than you, I was in my late 30s when I was putting my feet on the floor every morning and feeling what I sometimes share as dread, call it dread, anxiousness, this feeling inside that I couldn't explain, but now in hindsight, which you clearly got earlier than me, was a sign, it was a symptom that there was something wrong. And there's a lot of people that are listening to this, watching this on YouTube even, that are in that situation too. And so it's a blessing that we get to point it out and give people an awareness. Maybe it's not a new awareness, but it could be even that there's nothing wrong. It's not a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that something's right, in fact, because it's like a tripwire or where a breaker goes off, a circuit breaker goes off in your home, and you wouldn't ignore a circuit breaker going off. I mean, some people I guess would, where now you can't plug in, the toaster doesn't work, the microwave doesn't work, or whatever it is, or the lights go out. I mean, if your TV goes out, they're going to go they're going to go right to the garage and find that circuit breaker and trip it, but maybe some other place they'll ignore it. And I think that's the problem, is that too many people are ignoring the symptoms and the signs that something's not right. And I did for years and years till I couldn't stand the pain anymore. So I want to dive in. Anything you want to say about that, please go right ahead. And then I want to dive into what this book is about, because I hear too often from people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s that they don't understand millennials. And I don't buy that, frankly. So I definitely want to get your slant on some of this too. So yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are conditioned to not listen to these signs, because there's a collective story of that everything is meant to be so hard, and you're not meant to feel good, and that feeling good is meant to be earned. And that's a collective story that is now really dissolving. And we're going to get into that when we talk about millennials. But, the reason that I suppose it took me, like, again, it's like I woke up one morning and the noise in my head when I deferred my Ph.D., ended up withdrawing from my Ph.D. It just was the noise in my head. There was just one moment where my soul just like snuck in and turned it off so I could hear, because I wasn't listening to my body. I wasn't listening to that, like, to the fact that I wasn't excited about it anymore. I didn't let that be evidence, where it is evidence. Like, our excitement or lack of is evidence, and we're not letting it be, because we aren't letting ourselves move to the story that this is meant to feel good. We are meant to be excited. We are meant to be thriving. And so we ignore all the clues that are always there. Like, we only have to just close our eyes and tune in for 5 minutes and ask the question, like, is this where I'm meant to be? Am I still excited about this? Am I still curious about this? Is this something, again, have I changed my mind? Which is the greatest integrity that we have, is our ability to just say, you know what, that is not resonating with me anymore. I'm changing my mind. And that could mean like exiting a business just as it's about to become profitable. It could mean walking away from anything because it's not in alignment anymore. And we're taught to prioritize everything other than alignment, which is why people go on with these symptoms for so long without admitting it to themselves, because the collective is putting that story on everyone. Well, I mean, it's not the collective is putting that story. It's that people are choosing to borrow that story from the collective rather than creating a story, which is, no, excitement is all the evidence I need. What I can follow my excitement and my curiosity and make a living out of that, like my soul, and also allow ourselves to let our soul give us the clarity that, let it be as clear as it is, right? Because our soul is so clear, we're just not listening. So it's, it just comes down to that trust and that willingness to go against the story that so many people around us are holding on to. Like, again, with my PhD, thank God my mom was my mom was a full-time school teacher, and she very much valued education. So when I deferred my PhD, I just said to her, Mom, this isn't for me anymore. And she just had so much trust in me. She was like, I get it. You've been at university enough that whatever it is next for you is going to be great. And thank God my mom, I really valued her advice, but thank God she trusted me and didn't lay it on like, well, Peter, you're not many people get the opportunity, that you're a PhD scholarship, you should. But unfortunately for many people, that's their immediate environment. And so it's tough for them to get the courage to honor their alignment. And that's really what millennials are, just to segue, are really doing, is what I call this divine intolerance. It's this attitude that we have that's not attitude, it's divine intolerance. Like, we know that we are not meant to feel that way. And therefore, millennials are demanding like better working environments, work from home policies, not wearing baggy suits to work. This standard, because that's what we know we are here to create and live, so that when our children are going to have even more divine intolerance than us. So it's just this, we're getting whiffy, like, hold on a minute, that 9 to 5 doesn't genuinely work for us. And it's something that's not, we've thought up, it's in our DNA. Like, genuinely, we are here to be a more thriving collective for our planet and our children. So that's why we are divinely intolerant of all the things that have previously been so expected of people our age.
What's coming up for me is the word modeling. And this is really important, I think, is a big piece. When I was waking up and feeling the way I was feeling so many years ago, I kept it to myself. I kept it as my private thing. I didn't know whether I could even share that at that point. We had young kids, 4 kids. We had houses and cars and all kinds of responsibilities, et cetera. So it was a part of me just sort of owning the fact that, as you said, nobody promised me a rose garden, right? That old song, nobody promised that it had to be easy or anything like that. And the truth is, I came home one day from work. It was late. I had missed the kids going to sleep. And I walked up to my wife and I said, baby, if I keep doing what I'm doing, you're going to be a widow. Mm. And you could have heard a pin drop. And what was amazing is that she didn't remind me of all the reasons why it wouldn't be a good idea to exit my law career. I had a multi-state, multi-million-dollar law practice and a lot of responsibility, clients and all kinds of things. And she didn't remind me of everything that would be put at risk if I decided I need to change something. She just said to me, deep breath, right? Pause and hold. We'll figure it out. And that was her, just like your mom, trusting. She trusted me, even at the moment when I was learning trust for myself, because I think that's a part of this whole equation, is that it's important when you have people around you that will reflect trust in you back, as your mom did, but ultimately it becomes our responsibility and our journey to trust ourselves. So why the word modeling came up is, for me, these are the things that when we have kids, or regardless of whether we have kids, want to have kids or not, we're modeling in the world. We're constantly modeling for others how we are showing up. And this idea of divine intolerance is something I would have called before this divine discontent. And I love that term, divine intolerance. And you're right, our kids and our kids' kids are going to be less tolerant. They're much more intolerant. And take a look at the Me Too movement. Take a look at what's going on now. And like a lot of things too, because it's never black and white. It's a pendulum. So when we're becoming intolerant to some things, the pendulum swings. And just like a pendulum, this is not me making it up. It's physics. It's a law. If a pendulum swings in 30 degrees to this direction, it will automatically swing back in the opposite direction 30 degrees exactly. Mm-hmm. And so, finding this place of center or harmony, or maybe somebody would call balance, the Tao, the way of middle and center, I think is really a part of the movement that we may ultimately be talking about. But the pendulum will swing to that intolerance. We won't tolerate, working in an environment where we don't feel like the work we're doing is meaningful, where we're not fulfilled and feel purpose driven, and where we don't buy in, or we are selling our souls for money, selling our time for money. So at least from my standpoint, in addition to doing what my heart called me to do and learning how to trust my heart, I also felt good. And now in hindsight, in having modeled that for our kids, because our oldest children, our daughter Chelsea and Lindsay, are both in their mid-20s and doing and thriving and doing incredible. And they're the people who this book is, talking about, the millennials. Yeah. So, well, let's dig into what was the genesis of this book, what was the motivation, and what's the ultimate outcome? Because I know when I started to write Pivot, I wrote it for the kids. I initially wrote it as a guidebook, because I figured when our kids would get to that place in their 20s, 30s, 40s, whenever it might be, where they hit the wall, where were running up against a crisis point, a crisis of which direction to go, whether it was midlife or otherwise, I got a midlife calling, and I wanted them to know exactly how it was that even though it wasn't necessarily easy or clean, I was able to change my direction, as you say, make a new decision based on what the message, the somatic intelligence, the message that my body was sending and my heart was sending. So please share with us about the book, the motivation, why you wrote it, and really what's the central premise.
Yeah. So I suppose the motivation, and everybody says that I wrote the book while I was pregnant, edited it in the first 3 months of Soul's life. And, the motivation and the reason why I always tell people writing a book is not hard. Getting information out it's just not hard, especially when you're really engaged in the book and you're aligned with the book. So my motivation was, I wanted it to be done by the time she was born. It was important to me, if anything ever happened to me, that she had this book, and she knew that how much I cared about the world and her generation, but how much our entire generation cared about our role here. And I wanted it to be like a timestamp, so that when she looked back, she was like, wow. And when they looked back, they're like, wow, that's what was going on then. And that's what you cared about. And this is what you were talking about. And so that's why I was very open in the book about sharing how I felt about like things that were happening in politics, even though I'm not really into politics, purely for that timestamp, so they could like look back and laugh and be like, wow, that's how they were responding. So my motivation was, my child and her entire generation. And, when you're carrying the next generation in your womb, you start to have, and I know, as a parent, you start to feel more responsible for the world even more, and to not sit on projects like this. And everything is like, I feel like books are their own entities. It was just time. The entity told me I want to be written now. This is how I want to be written. And I just let it out. So, I suppose it was to help the world understand millennials, which is so important. And I do that in the introduction so that we can just get on with it. And it was for my generation to understand themselves, not feel weird, not feel like they had to take on the projections of selfish, entitled, lazy. And then also for my daughter's generation. So it was three-pronged.
Yes. It really is powerful when we do decide in the moment that there's something that's seeking expression, and we won't deny it. There's so many people that I hear from as part of our community are people pivoting, people pivoting, going to pivot, thinking about it, whatever it is. But there's book writing, getting a book out is one of those things that a lot of folks say they want to do. And very few people actually go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, really empowering to know that you did it, and it didn't have to be difficult. You didn't make it any more difficult than it needed to be, I suppose. So share with us, some time ago, I don't know whether you saw this, but Simon Sinek, who I used to promote Simon quite a bit, promote his book, Start With Why. When I became the CEO of a company called Peak Potentials some years ago and started running that organization, the first book I gave 2 books out in the first few weeks, and one of them was Start With Why. So Simon Sinek's book, I'm saying it now, is an amazing book. And recently, in the last year, let's say, he did a talk that, I don't know, it's got millions and millions of views now, about millennials, and it was really pejorative, like a negative slant on millennials. I don't know if you saw that talk, but it pissed me off to see it. And I thought, dude, I thought you were so much more enlightened than this. You're speaking to the stereotype. You're certainly speaking to something that people are, that you can, you can point to, and yet you're not looking below the surface or looking at the motivation or the why. So you wrote a book called Start With Why, and yet you're not looking at, it seems, the why behind why a millennial is showing up at work the way they do. So you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually wrote about that in the introduction of my book. I referred specifically to Simon Sinek and gave him my full respect, because I actually included that Start With Why diagram in one of my keynotes to 15,000 people 4 years ago. So I also, and still to this day, I think is some very valuable information. But that piece, for me, it missed the mark, because you can't talk about millennials if you're not a millennial. You can't say you understand millennials if you're not actually running with the equipment of a millennial. And so, they're all intellectual points to try and explain millennials, like the parenting, the phones, the technology. Can go on forever and ever and ever. But the bottom line is, every generation is perfectly equipped for the planet. And that's what people are failing to understand, is that this is all about evolution, and there's such a divine explanation that people are missing when they're trying to be intellectual. It's like, well, we can go and have a look at every generation and pick apart the intellectual aspects of why they do what they do and they are how they are, but it's all about the heart. And what I know to be true is that millennials have different genetic equipment. We were made differently. And at the beginning of my book, there's a diagram. There's a diagram of God wearing a beanie, whatever people assume God looks like, source, universe. And he's emptying like a box of divine intolerance into millennials. And there's like a team huddle, and he's saying, hey, you're about to go down. It's 1988. This is what the world's going on with the world right now. We're overpopulated. We require this. So this is the equipment I've put into your DNA so you can respond. So that's really the answer. It's evolution. It's simple. There's nothing wrong. It's perfect. Millennials are doing exactly what they are meant to do for this world in exactly the way they are meant to do it. So in the introduction of my book, I pretty much say, like, hey guys, look, I hate to break all these like great research articles that are going on, but I can explain everything in just one word, and it's just evolution. So you can all hold your horses, stop doing all this research, stop trying to, you can look online and find how many millennials sleep with their phone by their bed. It's like the whole world is obsessed with understanding millennials. And yet it's because they are seeing this generation operate with new equipment, and it's scary for them. And it's just crazy to me, because when I look at my daughter Sol, I'm like, I can't wait to see what you do differently to us. But millennials aren't being received by the world that way, because the changes are happening so rapidly. So it's like every generation takes their turn to change the world. That's just how it is. Millennials are taking our turn to change the world. And just because the world is not comfortable with the how, they don't need to be comfortable with the how. They have to trust that the world has different demands now. The planet has different demands and expectations of us as people. And therefore, the divine source, when we were created, had to gift us and make us different so that we could respond differently to the world. And again, that might be like too woo-woo example for some people, or an explanation for some people. But if you look back at generations, every single generation was different to the one before, which is why every generation brought different inventions, different policies, different politicians, different ways of doing things. And that's all that's happening right now with millennials. So the whole world just needs to take a chill pill and trust, and also give a little bit of credit to everything amazing that this generation is doing, because it is fun. If people can just put again, it just comes down to everybody borrows the story from the collective that millennials are selfish and entitled because it's so easy to borrow the story that everyone else is telling. But if you actually look at millennials and all the amazing things they do and how much they care, and that every company has a social cause attached to it, and that, you know, there is this divine intolerance, and like there has never been a more civic minded, environmentally caring generation on earth than millennials. And yet people are just not really giving credit where credit's due. Yeah, there are lazy entitled millennials, but there are lazy entitled Gen X's as well. There are lazy entitled baby boomers. We just have to look at the heart of the generation, which is what my job is because I'm in it every day. The heart of the generation is what we want to look at. And for harmony on this world, I think it's a lot better to just be like, okay, millennials, like, you're different. What do you like? Show us, like, what's different? Because that's, for me, I'm so grateful that I know this for when Soul grows up and she has these gifts and talents and abilities and these thoughts that are different to mine. I can appreciate them as her genetic equipment that is different from mine, because in order for us to evolve, every generation has to do things differently. And it really is that simple, you know? So,
Peta, what is the heart of the millennial generation? I would love, like, if it's in a series of words or there's come out in sentences or phrases, whatever, that's fine. But I'd love for the people that are still shaking their head and aren't getting it. let's give them the DNA. Let's give them the heart of the generation that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. So things that don't make sense to millennials, I suppose, a hierarchy, like celebritydom. And again, this isn't all millennials. I'm not talking about every single millennial. I'm talking about, like, what's at the heart of this generation that's going to evolve us. This whole idea of hierarchy and celebritydom, like where success being measured by what you do rather than how you feel. So it's, again, the underlying role of our generation, I believe, is that to get people to understand that the reason there are homeless people, the reason there is poverty, the reason that everything with the environment we believe is happening, all of that is happening, is not rocket science. It's all heart science. It is a lack of heart-centeredness. It's a consciousness issue. It's not a resource issue. And so our generation is clued into that. Like, it doesn't make sense that there's still people hungry. It doesn't make sense. It's not that we don't have enough money. It's that we collectively don't give enough of a shit. So that's why you see millennials build companies. They all have a profit share. You know, again, in the beginning of my book, I write about it. On Shark Tank, you see the millennials walk in. They're not wearing pinstripe suits anymore because they value their well-being and their vibration, because that's what we know to be what our planet requires right now. People need to feel good, or we are not going to be like our planet, and we are not going to know harmony with each other. Our alignment and our vibration is what we are here to change.
Right. So denying our heart, ignoring our heart, doesn't pay great dividends. And this is an interesting point that you're making, because and the reason I interrupted you there is because I'm just thinking in the mind of somebody who's expressed these objections, and I've heard them a lot, and, you know, regardless of the age, but let's just say it's some baby boomer that's saying, I don't get them. You know, I don't get this generation, and they're lazy and they're disrespectful. And so what, you know, Peta just said, they walk into Shark Tank, this great big opportunity. They should be wearing a suit. They should be showing respect, you know, for themselves, for the show, for, you know, modeling for other people. And it's like, stop right there. Because what they've seen, what millennials, and I am not a millennial clearly, but I have millennial age children. So to the extent that gives me any cred, so be it. But otherwise, my own, my heart and my gut instinct tells me that this is the issue, or part of the issue, is that what's been modeled for millennials is a generation and a world that doesn't work the best way it's capable of, meaning it's worked well enough. We've done a great job as the generation before and the generation before that, but it's not good enough. And that's what evolution is. It's never accepting the what is for what could be. That's mediocrity. So this is a generation that is intolerant to mediocrity. This is a generation that will trust an algorithm before they'll trust a person in many ways, because an algorithm doesn't lie. And what they've seen, or what's been modeled for them, are their parents or their parents' parents that have been cheated and lied to. So meaning, we had a huge bubble in the dot-com at the end of, the end of the last century. You had a huge real estate debacle in the United States and what became all but a depression here. And they've seen their parents get tossed out after 20 years of service from companies. They've seen companies that mismanaged, a prolific investment bank like Lehman Brothers go bust, go bankrupt, and ruin people. And Arthur Andersen and all these examples of what doesn't work. So for you to assume that they should do it the same way that you did it, or that someone, someone before did it, is really making a false assumption, or at least an assumption that's only going to lead to not having clarity. And what you talked about earlier, which was this soul clarity, this idea that our souls will tell us the truth, that if we're looking for the evidence. I was a lawyer, so for my prior iteration. So it really resonated with me when you talked about finding the clues, looking at the clues, being curious about the evidence, because the evidence, when we look at it, doesn't necessarily lie to us. We lie to ourselves. Our story is a lie, or the parents, following someone else's example of something that doesn't work becomes a lie. But thank you for sharing that.
So it's just an upgrade in standards, and it's not disrespecting anything that's come before. It's that there's different standards. And the bottom line is that if we want to have harmony with the earth, which we know is important, and harmony with each other in terms of humanity, it has to happen in the level of the heart. We have to collectively give enough of a shit. We have to feel better. Like, this is where people miss it. It's like, it's not our actions and our protests that are going to help the humans live in more harmony with the earth. It's that we are going to be vibrating at a level that is more like Mother Earth, that we're going to be feeling more like Mother Earth, that we're going to be giving enough of a shit. That's why millennials are like, look, I can sit in an office and do this, but if I'm not feeling good, I'm missing the point. That's the truth of this generation, because it has to be for us to evolve and be the collective we need to be for our children. So this is why shitty working environments, shitty clothes, like professionalism to our generation is not baggy suits and hair and makeup. It is honesty, integrity, authenticity, feeling good, creativity. It's a whole different idea of professionalism. It's just not the same. Like, I will walk into a business meeting with $1 billion company and I will be wearing my vintage Levi's and my Birkenstocks, because my professionalism is not measured by what I'm wearing. It's how authentic I am, how true I am to my vision, how much I am in my heart, my presence. That's professionalism for this generation. And there's so much more, like business standards. There's so much more, like, again, my book talks about everything. What's the way that we understand business to be done, money, how we meant to operate with money so that we can serve more people. What's that conversation look? And there's just things that, what doesn't work? Workaholism doesn't work. Like, we don't believe that we are meant to borrow. Like, that's not a story or a belief or a standard that our generation is meant to borrow. It's just,
right.
So that's why you're looking for, hey, well, we want to work from home. Like, our creativity is dependent on us thriving, not on, there's this shoulds and this path. It's just all different, because the earth is asking us, again, because that's why we're here. We're all here to evolve humanity, right? Is the earth is hiring us to feel better and to feel good and to enjoy our lives more. And that's why we're working with these different standards, because it's not that we are trying to have attitude against anything. It's that this is our truth and this is what we are here to do. And I know that my child is going to have a whole new level of standards. So again, how we lead, how we live, how we earn, and how we give, it's just all different. And so much of it, if you look at it, is actually going back to ancient tribes and the indigenous tribes and how they lived, but made fresh and relevant again, made adaptive to all of this new world of cryptocurrency and everything like that. So it's just, we're just doing our job. We're just doing it in a way that is aligned with what we know to be true in our hearts. And it's, if you pay attention, if everybody pays attention, and I say to my mom all the time, there's so much I admire about her generation, their courteousness, stuff that perhaps our generation doesn't have, but no generation is perfect. What we are working on is something on a grander scale, like harmony for everyone. We are working on getting our collective to give more of a shit so that we can solve these issues of, poverty and hunger and all of this. And so that's why we know we cannot solve these big world issues if we as a collective are not feeling better, because we will know harmony when we are feeling more like the earth. That's when we have harmony. Like it's not a resource issue. It's not a rocket science issue. It's a consciousness issue. So that's our work. And again,
and what's beautiful about that too is the fact that you're not negating a prior generation.
No, not
because
at all.
evolution is not about saying that what came before was wrong or bad.
No,
because never. In that prior generation, whatever it was, it could have been the civil rights movement of the 60s. It could have been, women's rights movement of the 70s. People were doing the best they could, or were adapting and evolving and becoming what was required in that exactly. moment. So the earth was asking then as well. It's not like the earth is hiring now and it's hiring millennials, and somehow, that's different than the earth hiring in 1950 or at any prior time. And I think that's the point is, or at least it's one of the points, is that it's relative. So it's not a judgment, right?
Everything was perfect then. Everything is perfect now. The world wasn't overpopulated. So companies didn't have to have the same levels of sustainability and caring for the planet back then. But right now, companies will go bust if they're not taking care of the planet. Like it's literally eco or bust now, because that's what the environment is requiring of us. So it's like, but back then the world wasn't overpopulated. The strain on the environment wasn't as great. So people could get away with plastic and stuff like that, but you can't get away with it anymore, which is why
they had other problems.
Yeah. So they call it hipster. Like it's hipster to care about the planet. No, it's just a requirement now. And so that's why this divine intolerance is so important, because the standards are being given to us by the earth, not being made up,
Yes. And nothing changes without modeling. Just as a parent, I'm thinking to myself that our kids, with 4 kids, I don't really believe our kids ever really listen to us. They don't listen to us very much. Never have, but they watch everything we do and have. And so that modeling becomes so important that it is in many ways more about the actions that we're taking versus the lip service that we're giving to certain things. So and authenticity is at the root of that. So I couldn't agree more. I was holding this heart as we were speaking. Mm-hmm. I held it up. So those of you that are listening but not watching on YouTube, I've got this beautiful heart I hold in my hand. And as Peter was speaking, it was just something I was thinking was so important that this is a movement toward the heart. Peter, what are your thoughts on that? If, my own experience in the past among other pivots was that I was a lifeguard, and I remember learning as a lifeguard that you had to really protect the people in your water. And we used to have a mantra at the beach I worked at. It was quite an active beach, lots of rip currents, and people were really going into water they shouldn't have been in. So we were making saves all the time. We used to say, nobody goes down in my water. That was a mantra. And you make the save, you literally make the save, or you die trying. And that vigilance, that being on guard, I think is something that it took its toll on me for a lot of years, to be always on guard and always vigilant, and to feel this great stress and this strain and this protection of even protecting myself, my heart from being harmed, and protecting my family and all of that. And I think in this generation that we're talking about now, they speak much more vulnerably. They're much more thinking about the use of their heart, the acknowledgement and the guidance of their heart. So it's a movement away from the guarding of the heart to the being guided by the heart. Does that make sense?
I think our generation just doesn't really have a tolerance for bullshit, and it's, and we don't relate to it, like you can say all the words, but we are feeling. And that's, again, it's not just millennials, it's everyone on earth right now. The bullshit detectors are being cleaned up, and we want to feel people's authenticity. It's just a new standard right now. Like, we are being asked to speak more from our heart, to share more vulnerably. And this is the same thing goes in marketing. Like, there's all these lead pages and fancy this and that, and that's on its way out, because you can't trick people into buying what they don't want to buy anymore. Like, that whole NLP manipulation It's not.
It's an old paradigm, right?
Yeah.
Even the language that some of these, whatever you want to call them, but these internet marketing gurus or whatever, however they call themselves, it is bullshit, because they're using the terms that make no sense when you think about what authenticity would be in the selling process, for example, because we talk a lot about this, and the Heart of Enrollment is a program that we actually deliver as a speaker training for people to experience what it would be like to actually enroll versus sell. So instead of closing sales, you're opening relationships. And in this idea of tripwires and lead magnets and ego bait and just any number of other things that are terms of art. Even the word funnel, you think about what a funnel is and how you funnel people like they're cattle and moving them to from a place, gathering them and then moving them into a place where you can corral them and sell them something.
Yeah.
I mean, as you said, there's a lot of resistance to that. And I don't know that the marketplace has even caught up with that yet, because so many people are still playing at this old paradigm. So really powerful that you pointed that out. So your book is absolutely wonderful. I want people to get out and obviously they can find it in various places. I'm going to put together our post-production team will have show notes with links and things to how people can find out more about you, find out more about the book, get the book. Obviously, go to Amazon for The Earth is Hiring. Peta, I would love to just, as we're wrapping up here, find out about some of your rituals, the practices that you have to keep you resilient, because in the world that we're living, regardless of the age or philosophy even, disruption is greater now. The pace of disruption is greater each and every day. I think the stress levels that people are dealing with are greater than they've ever been before. And resilience is really important. So we're a huge believer in self-care, not seeing self-care as selfishness or self-absorption or something. So how is it that you take care of yourself? What's a ritual that you have for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed a bit since having a child, but I have help so that's great. I have a move every day, obviously, that's just so important. I have a cacao ceremony every morning, so around mid-morning, and I'll play with Soul in the morning, and then I'll have my nanny take care of her while I sit in cacao ceremony. And that's so important to me as a mom too, because I want her to see me thriving, and I want her to not just see me working and not just see me being very present with her, but still taking responsibility for my well-being. And so that time is, I just say to her, so Mom's gonna go sit in meditation now, and I'll go up wherever, and when we're away, maybe outside I have a little Zen room upstairs, and I'll just sit with a cup of cacao and meditation and write, whatever it is. It's like 30 minutes to an hour where it's just whatever. It could be creating, but it's just a ceremony. It's just a daily ceremony where I sit and I listen and I create. And to me, that's the non-negotiable of the day, is that ceremony, just to recalibrate and get on the same page as my life. And even no matter what else is going on during the day, that's important for me. And it's also really important for her, so that's a ritual that is just non-negotiable for me.
It's tough to give a love that you don't understand yourself. So you want to give your daughter and everybody, I suppose, I guess it's not necessarily your intention every minute, but to provide unconditional love to others, whether they're your blood relatives or the other people we're really truly connected to. We have to have some understanding of what unconditional love feels like for ourselves. And I'm a huge believer in taking care of the body as well. And I know you're connected with Isogenics. I know you've been somebody that's spoken to many, many thousands of people and have a big mission to convey with that company and the work that you're doing on behalf of health and the supplements and the things that we put into our body, with the water we drink, the food we give ourselves, and even the things that we use to supplement our nutrition in some ways. I'm actually a user of that product or a series of many, many products that Isogenics has, but I've been using them for several months as well. And I've really appreciated it. So
Mhm.
it's one of those wonderful things I think that we all get to work on each day. How is it that we will care for ourselves more and more? And taking 30 minutes, as you say, making it non-negotiable. I
Mhm.
think it's a powerful thing. Um, a friend of mine years ago said, if you don't schedule something, it doesn't happen. And
Yeah.
so having it, for those of you listening and going, yeah, I hear you, but I get up early and I got to get to work and I've got all these things going on in my life, et cetera, et cetera. And the fact of the matter is you have to schedule it anyway. So
Mhm.
whether it's to walk for 20 minutes, the health benefits associated with walking, just taking a walk outside or anywhere really for 20 minutes a day are significant. But if you don't put it in your calendar to do it, the chances of you doing it might not be good, especially if your
Mhm.
habit, if the routine has been so far that you don't do it. So in any event, I will segue into a final thought or two here. But first, before doing that, Peta, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Adam.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to reading Earth is Hiring. So this is I'm always reading 3 or 4 books at once. So this is another book now that I get to enjoy, and I'm looking forward to it. Those of you out there, whatever you're up to right now in this moment, I want to entice you and encourage you to do something to recalibrate now. Maybe this has really motivated you. Maybe you're feeling really great. I hope you're feeling really great after listening to Peta's wisdom, and even maybe some of the silly things I've said. And
Mhm.
you're inspired to do something for yourself in this moment or today sometime, that you will take good care of yourself, whether it's to go make a green drink or it's to take a walk, go drink some water, go give somebody a hug, go ask for a hug, whatever it is, that you do something to create that level of self-love. Self-love comes from self-care in my view, and that only contributes to your self-trust and your resilience, which we all need more and more. I will also leave you with the waking ritual that I have each day, and I will say a prayer. This is my gratitude. When I say prayer, for me, it's a form of gratitude. And I want to express gratitude for the fact that each and every one of you listening and watching this now has woken up today. You couldn't have been watching this, couldn't be listening if you didn't wake up, and that's a blessing. And at the same time, it wasn't a guarantee. It wasn't, you didn't have a guarantee you would wake up today. So tomorrow's the same. If we get to wake up, when we get to wake up tomorrow, it's not guaranteed. It is something to be truly grateful for. So my hope and my prayer is that you wake up tomorrow and that I get to do the same. And that in that moment where we're taking that first conscious breath of the day, that we have the awareness that there are people who will be taking their very last breath in that moment. That's the truth. And there will also be people who are taking their first breath of life, babies being born in that moment. So there's no question that there's a reason that you've been given that day. I believe there's an assignment that you have. And every day that I get to wake up, I realize I have an assignment. At least that's what I believe. And so I hope that you're willing to wake up tomorrow, that you're willing to be grateful in the moment for that breath. And that lastly, if you're also willing to do it, these words have changed my life. And you can say them from bed, or you can wait till your feet hit the floor. But if you'd like to try this on for size, say these words. Say, I love my life. I love my life. I love my life. What a blessing it's been to be with all of you. We'll see you very, very soon. Of course, I'd love for you to leave a review on iTunes, or leave a comment at adammarkel.com/podcast. Let us know what you think. And of course, you can check out our Start My Pivot community, which is growing leaps and bounds. All kinds of amazing support, vulnerability, honesty happening in that Facebook group, Start My Pivot community on Facebook. We'll see you soon, everybody. Ciao for now.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you now have the tools and greater insights to navigate your own pivot. Help us inspire others by sharing this episode and leaving your comments over at adammarkel.com/podcasts. For more tips, strategies, and support as you consciously pivot into a new business and lifestyle you love, join our Pivot community on Facebook at pivotfb.com.